Hello, everyone, and welcome to Capital W Collective's Mentorship Matters. I'm your host, Dr. 𝗵𝗍, and I have the distinct pleasure of bringing professionals of various roles who will share their wealth of experiences, insights, and recommendations from their own mentoring journeys. If you know Capital W Collective, you know our commitment to amplifying women in the capital market space through education, elevation, and empowerment. And in this series, we'll discuss the impact and importance of mentoring, no matter your role, educating you on what to do to elevate yourself and to lean in and to feel empowered to get into mentoring. And today, our guest is Valerie DiMaria. Now, when I read this biography to you, you are going to probably, maybe you should just be seated because I'm telling you, it's impressive. Here we go. Valerie DiMaria has earned recognition as a communications and marketing leader and executive coach in both the corporate and agency worlds. She's held CMO, COO roles at Fortune 100 companies and developed comprehensive brand and reputation building programs, working closely with CEOs at GE Capital, 𝗵𝗲𝗿𝗲, and Willis. As SVP CMO for Willis Group Holdings, Valerie led worldwide marketing, brand and reputation management, executive communications, media relations, employee communications, government affairs, community relations, corporate philanthropy, and events, making her the voice of experience when advising and coaching her clients today. She's the founder and principal of The10Company, a strategic consultancy dedicated to helping C-suite executives transform their businesses through authentic, results-driven marketing and communications. One step into The10Company's website, and you'll see an impressive list of clients, including Alcoa, Amgen, Bank of America, BBC, EY, Fannie Mae, Fortitude Re, IKEA, Intelsat, KPMG, KKR, Macy's, McKinsey, New York Life, Quest Diagnostics, Raytheon, State Street, and Xylem. This list tells you that marketing, communications, and executive coaching span across all industries, and we couldn't be more excited to have Valerie with us today. Valerie, welcome, and thank you for making time for Capital W Collective and our followers.
Well, Dr. 𝗵𝗍, thank you for that most generous introduction.
Well, I got to say, when I read that, if I hadn't already talked with you before I read that bio, I would have said, yeah, I probably shouldn't be the one to do this interview. I can't talk with her. But because I've had the luxury of meeting you before, I will just say one of the key things, and it's even highlighted on your website, is that what makes you and your partner at The10Company different is that you're more like us than who we perceive maybe a CEO or a CCO or CMO to be, and that elevated, pedestal that we put those folks on. You're very, very authentic and very genuine and very much connected to the people and clients that you work with.
Well, thanks. Well, we're all human beings, even some of the biggest CEOs. When you get them behind closed doors, you can see their own vulnerabilities and insecurities, and everybody needs mentors and coaches throughout their career. So this conversation, I think, is very relevant no matter where you are in your career path.
I love it. And that brings me, so, our audience really finds great value in hearing from our guests about significant mentoring experiences that have helped shape them. So what stands out to you in your career and or your life around mentoring?
Well, I've always been a big proponent of mentoring. I've been the recipient of great mentors throughout my career, and I'll give you a couple of little anecdotes, as well as mentoring many dozens of people over the years. It's always nice to give back. And mentoring to me is always a two-way relationship. Even if I'm the mentor, I'm always learning from the people that I'm mentoring. But my first mentoring experience was out of a difficult situation. I was a young account executive in a big PR agency, and even though I was a journalism major, I was struggling with writing. And I was in a meeting with a big group of people, and I had written a press release, and the VP of the group took my press release and said, "This is garbage," and threw it across the conference room table. I'll never forget that. I was quite traumatized to be called out in front of everybody and embarrassed, and that usually is not the way I operate. And I left the meeting, and one of the women in the meeting, who was senior to me, came to me and volunteered to mentor me and help me with my writing. And that was such a great experience. So it was around a specific skill set that I needed to get better about. But she was so encouraging. She gave me very specific techniques, but she also made it fun. She would send me cartoons about people who have a hard time writing and looking at that blank page. So it was a really positive experience.
That's a
And then much
beautiful.
later in my career, when I was more senior, I had a mentor who really helped me in a different way, helped me to think more strategically, to help me do a better job when I did leadership presentations and meetings, helped me to make the move from agency life to corporate life, including helping me negotiate the compensation package, which was in the corporate world new to me at the time. So different type of relationship, but very valuable, of course. And I'm happy to say I'm still friends with both those people to this day.
Wow. So there's so much to unpack there. That first story of being early in your career in a moment that for some may have been an ender for them. They may have just walked away and thought, if this VP thinks that I can't write, then I must not be able to write. I've made a poor career choice. But you stuck with it. And that for that woman to see another woman who had incredible talent and capability, but needed some support and some direction to step in as a mentor for you had to be invaluable to your confidence.
Absolutely. Very generous and taught me a lot of lessons about relationships at work.
Yeah. And I love the second story about later in your career having a mentor to help you navigate a changing environment, a changing landscape for you from your career path journey and to see that mentoring isn't how you just do early on in your career to get to the next step and then it's all done, but that mentoring can be a benefit to you in different phases and different chapters of your career and life.
Exactly. Well, even CEOs, the Wall Street Journal used to have this great feature they did periodically called the CEO Board of Advisors. And it was not a story about their formal board of directors and their companies, but basically their mentoring network. And there was usually three or four different people, no matter who you were as a CEO. It might be somebody who was a technology leader who was helping you on the tech side. It might be somebody who was more advanced in the financial world, but they had different advisors. There was their board of advisors that would help them in, even though they already were at, I would say, the pinnacle of their careers.
I love that. I will say I've been a proponent of the board of the corporation of insert your name for many, many years. And I use it myself. And for many of us, the journey of where mentorship is concerned isn't necessarily a single person or a couple of people, but there are often several people who are in some way mentoring us along on our journey. And that becomes your board of directors of that corporation of you. And to pull all of that together, as I've coached emerging leaders, I've asked them that question: who's on your board of directors of the corporation of you? And when they think of it a little differently, then they start to really dig into how those folks have mentored them. And in your example, it sounds like you've got a great board
It's great. And another avenue, two other avenues just to maybe not formally mentoring, but joining professional organizations. I'm also a big believer in that. Depending upon your industry, we're talking about capital markets. There are a number of organizations like yours. It's so great to get advice and to develop relationships within your profession, and those organizations are a great way to do it. And your schools. Many great colleges and universities have great mentoring programs that that's at any stage of your career. Also professional development programs. You just have to go and get involved as an alumni.
I love that. And that's intentionally seeking out those opportunities for mentoring because you do have to own that yourself. You can't just sit and wait for someone to recognize in you that you have that talent. You had that benefit early on in your career, but you were open to that opportunity. And then later in your career, I'm sure that there was a bit of, hey, can you help me with this transition, with navigating this change? And you do have to be intentional in that way. I love the examples you've given for those groups that can really lean into mentoring. So our audience might not be familiar with the 10 Company and what you all do there, but what was the catalyst to really start your firm? And I feel like there's a real interesting story behind that name, the 10 Company.
Well, I'm glad you asked. So I, as I said, grew up in the agency corporate, as you mentioned at the top of our discussion. And I decided I really wanted to take all that experience and become an entrepreneur and use that to help clients and kind of chart my own vision and path. So I started the 10 Company with my business partner, 𝗪𝗲'𝗿𝗲. And unlike a lot of agencies where they put your name on the door, we decided we wanted to create a brand. And so the brand is the 10 Company. And it does mean several things. It means we always want to rate a 10 on a scale of excellence, 1 to 10 in our client evaluations. That's one aspect of the 10 Company. The other is we have the 10 tenets of client service
Mm.
that come out of our own in-house experience. So some of them are passion, vision, communication, etc. And they all have, we actually, our logo has the one the vision IO is the number 10. So each of the tenants has an IO in it that is represented as a 10 to kind of reinforce the brand. And then the third piece is depending upon the size of the budget, we will reinvest 10% of the fees that you spend with us in programming, complementary programs such as executive training or industry reports.
Wow. Okay, so that's a strong story behind that logo and that company name. It's woven through everything that you do. It's not just a brand. I love that. Love it. So one of the things that I noticed about your organization as I was prepping for today, you shared some information with me about your Learn to Be a Risk Taker interactive session that's absolutely got me intrigued to learn more. Now, I noticed that the session objective, one of those was, quote, inspire and motivate employees at all levels and positions to take risks in their business lives and be more effective and better leaders by example. So, how do you see being a risk taker as an imperative trait for leaders? And how does that trait then inform mentorship or fostering a mentor culture?
Well, I think being a risk taker is very important because you're not going to discover new ways and better ways of doing things if you don't try something different, and that is inherently risky. So we look at risk in really two ways. One is personal risk, sometimes as specific as are you going to speak up in a meeting? People sometimes feel like that's a risk. You know, how can you speak up in a way that shows up in a positive, as a positive for yourself, as well as how do you try new things? And so a large part of this is it's really twofold. One is having confidence, and we have different definitions of confidence. We have self-confidence, which obviously you feel you can do it. You have other confidence in that other people then have confidence in you. And then you have leader confidence where you instill confidence as a leader in your team. So those are the three aspects we aspire to, if you will. And then the other aspect of it, in addition to confidence, because we have this whole confidence toolkit that we get into, which I won't go into detail today, but it's really not being afraid to fail. People are afraid of failure, and you really need to take that step. And if you make a mistake, learn from it and move on. It kind of comes out of the agile methodology that started in the tech world, where you create software and instead of waiting and testing it for months and months and months and months, you get it out into the market. You see what works, what doesn't work. You take it back, you fix it, you go back with, 2.0. So how can you work smartly, quickly, learn from mistakes, and not get derailed from them?
Wow. So just imagine the power that most people would have if they became unafraid to fail, if they learned how to be a risk taker and reframed failure as opportunity or lessons learned or I mean, I think of all the folks that have famous people who've made quotes about fail, not being afraid to fail, not being
Yep.
afraid to take a risk, and how what is it? Michael Jordan said, I missed a million shots that I never took or something like that.
Yeah, and Mike Myers, the actor and comedian, his quote is, "Failure is just an early attempt at success."
Very 100% true, and a completely different way to frame it. We become so consumed with our fear of failure that we don't take a step into what our superpowers or our talents are, or even our skills. And for organizations, especially if organizations are playing for the long haul and they want to be relevant and stay important in their industry, whatever that industry happens to be, taking risk is a part of that.
Exactly. And it's also career risks. What are you doing with your career? I know some people, and unfortunately, this seems to be there's data that shows that it's women more than men in this circumstance. That if there's a new position you want to go after, if you can't check the box on every single qualification, you won't go for it. As opposed to men who maybe have a bit more bravado, and even if they only have half the qualifications, they will put their hand up and go for it. So that is another kind of risk taking and another kind of confidence. Now, obviously, you have to have, good credentials, but you don't have to know everything about a new job or a new opportunity in order to succeed in it. And that's also a different kind of risk taking.
Absolutely. And you're 100% right. I think if I remember correctly, the last study that I saw was that men will apply for a job if they meet 30% of the basic qualifications, but women have to meet more than 95% of those basic qualifications for them to apply. And it just seems that in some ways we silence our own voices about
Yes.
what our capabilities are because we're afraid to take a risk and to put ourselves out there. And when you think about applying for a role, if we're already 100% capable of doing everything on that list, what is there for us to learn?
Yeah.
Where is there for us to grow?
Good point. Good point. Yep.
And
So risk taking is about how you do your job, and then how do you get to the next stage. I think it's a lot for us to think about in a way that is positive.
And it seems as though, for folks that have been reticent about looking for a mentor or engaging with a mentor, that's another example of risk taking that might be the easiest lift that you make is to ask someone to mentor you or to work with someone as a mentor, to take a risk on their future, your future, whatever it happens to be. But it seems like that would be another example of an area where people could lean in and take a risk.
Right, exactly. And one of the things we like to talk about under mentoring is, yes, definitely have mentors, but also have sponsors. And what's the distinction? A mentor can help you, as I mentioned earlier with my examples, help you get better with the skill, give you advice about your career, encourage you. There's a whole lot of different things that a mentor can do. A sponsor is a little bit different. A sponsor is somebody who, this is my definition, who's in power, who actually can do something for you. They
Yeah.
can get you that next job. They can get you that promotion. They can get you a new assignment. They really can help you shine your light within your organization. And those people usually are the most senior people in the company. And that is a risk to go ask them for help, but I think that's really their job. I mean, senior leaders are supposed to be identifying talent in their organizations. So I would say approach, be thoughtful about it, of course, but approach others in the organization that you think could actually help you, and be specific with what you're looking for. And I usually people are open to helping the up and comers in the organization. You just have to kind of raise your hand.
Yeah, I mean, their role is to protect the legacy, build the legacy, and they can't do that if they're not identifying talent and helping to foster that growth. And so sponsorship, those folks are really the ones that have the social capital within your organization to be able to speak for you when you're not in the room and be able to help elevate you and get you connected in ways that, as you said, a mentor can help you with skills and talking about your career, but a sponsor is quite different. And
Yeah, and they're both very important. I find that people are more comfortable with the mentoring concept than the sponsor concept.
Absolutely. And back to risk taking, being a sponsor is also sponsoring someone is also a bit of a risk. I mean, you're risking your own brand, your own reputation to speak for someone else. And I think in some cases there might be people who are reticent to step into that role for someone, but they're really missing out on an opportunity to elevate leaders of the future and
Right.
talent it within their own organization and their pool. And then we end up losing those folks. So we got to be risk takers 100%. So I want to pull on a bit of a thread, something that you mentioned earlier that we were discussing about women and their voices and really having that confidence to put themselves out there, whether it's applying for a job or applying for a promotion or wherever it happens to be. So you have a program called Voices, and I would love for you to share some more detail about that with our viewers.
Thanks. So I'm going to step back for a second just about the 10 company. We do three big areas of marketing and communications work. We do the whole gamut. So the first area is external communications, which is thought leadership, media relations, social media, crisis, etc. Any communication to external audiences. The second big area is employee communications. We do strategy and execution. And then the third area is executive coaching, under which the risk taking and the voices program falls. And all our knowledge of how to do communications feeds into both the executive coaching and our voices program. So we are a female owned firm,
Mhm.
and we held C-suite, roles in organizations, and we like to try and use our knowledge and our own experience to help women do the same. So
Mhm.
really what we try and do is help women in particular. We coach everybody, but we have a program that is more sensitive, I will say, to some of the challenges that women have. Like in a meeting, how many times have you heard a woman propose an idea, no one says anything. 10 minutes later, some gentleman, and we love men, some gentleman proposes the same idea, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's a great idea, Mike." Like, and you're like, "I just said that." And how do you deal with that kind of circumstance? Our suggestion is to actually raise your voices, and say, Mike, I'm glad you agreed with what I had proposed a few minutes ago because, and you expand on it. So, like, go back and take credit. Don't let it just sit. But that's just one example. But we have lots of programming for women for presentation skills to help them get on boards, which is an area that women often need some coaching on.
Mhm.
How they can be better coaches to their teams, how to build a culture, just, confidence building techniques. And everything we do in the coaching area, including in voices, is very specific to the company that you work in, that culture, and to that individual as far as where they are in their career, what their style is. We do want people to be their authentic selves. I know authentic is a word that's often overused, but it's very important. We don't want to create, little robo people. We want
Right.
them to have their personality shine in an appropriate way. So with all that comes to play when we work with men, but also specifically with women's, because we've been there and I have some stories from earlier in my career that would make your hair curl, Dr. Stacey. Unfortunately, things have gotten better, but sometimes things, frankly, have not. Sometimes I feel we take one step forward and two steps backwards out there in the world, but we keep on trying.
The one thing that I love about, or one of the things that I love about what you just said is that you're coaching these women to find their voices, but to find a way to excel in their own organization rather than just saying, well, then you just need to go find a different organization. But you're teaching them to be strategic in how they present within their own companies and their own firms and to grow in those roles and then future roles
Right.
rather than, say just kick it, go out the door and go find someplace else.
Yeah, one thing we do as part of this program is we have a whole methodology around creating your executive brand. Some people
Mm,
call it your personal brand. I prefer executive brand because it's within a business context. And it's a process similar to how a company or a product creates a brand. What differentiates you? What's your superpower? How do you show up? It's again, there's a whole methodology to it. But once you create your brand, then how do you use it to show up in meetings, to show up with your team, we sometimes we use the language from your brand in your LinkedIn profile, for example. So there's a lot of actual practical application for it, but it's an exercise that we find can be very valuable in, again, finding your voice and what do you want to be most known for in your organization and or your career.
Wow, that sounds so powerful. And again, to your point, you coach everyone, but having that very strategic mindset of how you're coaching women who may be encountering different challenges or hurdles to overcome those things and to really step into the light, I think is so invaluable and such a fantastic service to be out there.
And I would say my big message, especially to women, is let's not be so hard on ourselves. We
Yes.
tend to be so self-critical in a way. I mean, it's good to be self-aware, of course. That's a very important leadership trait to be self-aware, but we sometimes are too hard on ourselves. It's very interesting because our executive brand methodology is you list what differentiates you, what are your best personal characteristics, what are your best skills and tech and other kinds of professional characteristics. Anyway, it's all positive, and whenever we've done this exercise, and we also do it with men, men are fine with it. Women almost always ask, well, where do I put my weaknesses? And I'm like, well, this is not about your weaknesses. This particular methodology is about let's catalog your positives and then how do we kind of meld that into a brand. But I've never had a man say, where do I put my weaknesses?
It is interesting how our in society we're just taught to believe that our weaknesses are going to be seen far more often than our strengths are.
Again,
It truly it's different. It's a different experience. But I love that, and I love that you're doing exercises to help women figure out ways to give themselves grace. As leaders, we often give grace to the people who are on our teams when they make a mistake or they have a shortfall, but we don't necessarily do that for ourselves. It's definitely a skill we have to learn.
yeah.
So we're at your mentorship matters nugget, and we love for our guests to share their mentorship nuggets. And maybe it's your advice to your younger self or an action that you recommend a person take to lean into mentoring. And with your vast experience and the work that you do today, what would you share with executives, most especially when it comes to mentorship?
Yeah. Well, my advice to my younger self would be let it go. Going back to being too tough on ourselves, when something would go awry, and things do, I would internalize it and worry about it as opposed to learning and moving on. So I would say a little less navel gazing would be a good thing. Just move forward in a positive way. As far as uh, just a more general advice, and this is going to sound so basic, but it's so important. It's to prepare, prepare, prepare. You just can't wing it. Whatever you're doing, you need to know your information, you need to know your strategy, you need to do your research. You really need to know your stuff and you have to prepare. But whether it's just going into a meeting as an attendee, you need to prepare and think about what you might add to that meeting to make it more valuable. Even with the most senior executives, nobody just gets up and does a great meeting or a great presentation. They really need to prepare. And I also like to do that with my mentoring. I'm a bit of a planner. So when I mentor somebody, I like to make sure we decide together what the objectives are going to be, what the time frame is going to be, how often are we going to meet, once a month, once every 2 months, whatever it might be. And then I like to put together with my mentee, based on what their needs are and what they're interested in, a list of topics that we're going to cover. It might be helping them create their executive brand, for example. We could always deviate from the plan, but I like to have it so I can be prepared going into each of the sessions.
Perfect. All right, my friends. So you heard it from Valerie, and I'm telling you, go check her out. Go check out the 10 Company. Look Valerie up, have a conversation with her and what it is that her organization and her firm can do for you. But be Elsa, let it go. Give yourself some grace. and be
You're lucky I'm not singing. Well, Dr. Stacey, this was great. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, probably the best thing to do is to find me on LinkedIn. So it's Valerie DiMaria, DiMaria, and at the 10 Company. And I'm the only Valerie DiMaria on LinkedIn, so I should be easy to find. And I'm happy to respond.
All right. So track her down, get connected, and be sure to join us for a future session of Mentorship Matters. Valerie, thank you for being here today. We are so grateful for your insights and your experiences and your openness to share them. And we thank you for being here and being a part of this.
Well, I enjoyed talking with you, Dr. Stacey, and getting to know you a bit, and I appreciate the opportunity and wish everybody out there well, and be a mentor and be a mentee.